Well, that's what I call perfect timing.
Ooh, we're good.
Volkswagen Commercial Vehicles, working with you. Search Caddy Offers to find out more.
Available with contract hire. Business users only. Excludes 20% VAT. Exclusions apply. T's and C's apply. Finance subject to status. Available to 18s and over. Volkswagen Commercial Vehicle Finance.
It's 9 o'clock across the UK.
As the Deputy Prime Minister, having been in government for 5 years, I also have this old-fashioned view that I want to defend the record of this government. So if David Cameron is too busy or too important to defend the record of this government with Ed Miliband, then I offer myself.
The most talked about radio show is here. Call Clegg. Get straight through now. 0345 6060 973. Leading Britain's conversation. This is Call Clegg with Nick Ferrari at breakfast. Only on LBC.
This is Nick Clegg with Call Clegg here on LBC, and you can get your questions to me now by calling 0345 6060 973 or email at nickclegg@lbc.co.uk, and of course you can watch on the LBC website at lbc.co.uk. The first caller today is Kim. Kim in Bristol. Hello, Kim.
Hello, Nick.
Hello.
Hello. On Tuesday, MPs met with the family members of the 3 young girls who recently went out to Syria. In that meeting, Sir Bernard Hogan-Howe said that if the girls were to come back to the UK on their own recognizance, that they could return home to their parents without any reprisal from the police authorities. Sir Bernard, I believe, said that in the context that they appeared to have not committed any act of terrorism. Nick, do you agree or disagree with the Commissioner on this point, and why?
Kim, I'm assuming, I didn't see his precise words, he wasn't suggesting that they've committed a crime, committed an act of violence or terrorism, that they would somehow then be exempt from the law. He can't say that. So I think
what he said was, excuse me, just to get this right,
sure.
Mr. Clegg, there was no evidence the girls had been involved in terrorism. Therefore, if they returned to the UK, they would not be immediately arrested, said Sir Bernard Hogan.
Yeah. So it's an important point that the law is the law, and you can't sort of just suddenly exempt people from the law, and no one is in any position to do that. So he couldn't have said that. So I think what he is saying, which I'm assuming is also an important message if it reaches the girls, to encourage them to come back and remove themselves from harm's way, is a message that if they haven't broken the law, that they will be real, they can return to their families, and that maybe I'm assuming he said it in order to reassure the families of that, but also to encourage the girls to change course, to come back and to, take themselves away from this kind of furnace of violence where they've gone to.
He actually did say that they could come home to their parents, and that basically they would not be arrested by the police authorities.
Yeah.
So do you agree with the Commissioner on that point, or do you disagree with that?
So, Kim, I agree that someone can assert, as he has done, that if someone has not broken the law, the police will not necessarily arrest them. Sorry, Kim, maybe I'm missing. What do you
think should happen, Kim?
I think that actually the girls should be allowed to come home, because I think that, if you remember, the girls thought they were going out there to become ISIS brides. Now, that clearly hasn't happened.
Yeah.
They've been taken into a home, and without sort of wanting to say anything on the radio that you obviously can't say, I imagine that they have gone through some pretty traumatic and horrible experiences within that home environment.
Right.
I imagine that they will not be able to extract themselves from that home. And I imagine that if they were able to somehow get out of that place and come back, I imagine that it would be a very good use to be able to use those girls to discourage other Muslim girls from going out there.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. And of course, one of the things that we try and do is give the police extra powers where they need extra powers. So we've legislated, for instance, in the last few months, Kim, to give the authorities at our borders the power actually to stop people leaving this country if it is obvious to the people who are checking their passports that they're actually wanting to go to places like Syria. That's a new power we've given them. Obviously, it wasn't used in this instance, but that's a new power. And you need to constantly be vigilant that we strengthen our armoury where we need to. But at the same time, your point, Kim, we've also got to make sure that those who might go to places like that and come back realising what a terrible mistake they've made, that we actually work with them to help prevent others from travelling out. I strongly agree with that. You can't treat every single individual in every single case the same, and where we can use those who regret what they've done and realise how foolish it was to do what they've done by travelling out there as an example for others, I think that is a very, very powerful antidote to the this very nasty, poisonous ideology which is piped into people's rooms and into their minds through the internet.
All right, we move on to it. Kim, thank you. Where do we go, Mr. Clegg?
Martin in Wood Green. Hello, Martin.
Hello, Nick.
Hello.
I've never spoken to a politician before, even though I worked in the House of Parliament for 7 years.
What did you do there, Martin?
I was a plumber in there, one of those boys in the blue overalls that you used to see knocking about.
What, you didn't speak to an MP at all?
Nah, not really. We should just get looked down upon, that's what it felt like. But anyway,
right, that's not good.
That's not what I'm calling about. I'm calling about the Jeremy Clarkson incident.
Yeah.
Now, I'm highly aware that I probably won't get a straight answer, but considering we are held to ransom by the BBC paying a tax that most of us don't really want to have to pay, don't you think it's down to the people on whether Jeremy Clarkson's gone? And what's your opinion? Do you feel he should be sacked, even if the majority of people would like him to stay in his job?
Look, the guy's obviously incredibly popular, and the shows that he does is provides entertainment to millions of people, but who is responsible for deciding whether he carries on or not? Well, it's obviously his employers, isn't it, Martin? I mean, I don't know what happened in this cold, hot meal fracas in I think it was in Newcastle, wasn't it? I don't know what happened, Martin, but at the end of
this term fracas, I don't know where they've come up with this.
Well, look, but punch-up is apparently what happened, and it is alleged that this is about whether Jeremy Clarkson got a hot meal or a cold meal. I don't think he wanted a hot meal and he got a cold meal.
He wanted a hot steak and he was offered either a meat platter or a cheese platter, and it is alleged he became very agitated by that, and again it is reported he seized, grabbed or in some way physically abused a producer of 10 years.
Yeah, but there you go, Martin. That's what's being reported. I can't act as a referee about what happened in wherever they were.
What's your opinion?
Well, my opinion is...
My question was based on if we have to pay this tax and we want him to stay, shouldn't it be down to what the public want, not what these bosses are deciding to do?
600,000 people currently signing a petition.
So, Martin, I'm trying to give you an answer. I think at the end of the day, if most people, everybody's an employee. He's an employee of the BBC. They're his boss, and so if they think he's done something wrong, as I say, the allegations are there was a punch-up about a meal, then it's for them to decide. Doesn't mean people can't express their support for him, as hundreds of thousands of people are. But at the end of the day, if you ask me who takes the decision, well, it's obviously his employer, isn't it? And I'm not his employer, and nor would you want, Martin, politicians to start determining which BBC star stays or goes.
When David Cameron says Clarkson is a friend of mine and a huge talent, I hope it can be sorted out, is Mr. Cameron right?
Because Mr. Cameron, I think, said in the same sentence, quite rightly, that it's not for him to decide.
But he is, and
he's allowed to express an opinion.
You hope it can be sorted out. I mean, clearly David Cameron wants his friend back in, or wants his friend, back in, I can say that, reinstated. You agree?
I agree that, as David Cameron said, it's for the BBC to decide. You can express admiration for the show Top Gear. My kids love Top Gear as well. I mean, it's a very entertaining show.
Do you like it?
I quite like it. Yes, it does. Yeah.
What do you mean by quite like it?
It makes me laugh. Yes.
Does it? Yeah.
I think some of these. Where they drive these sort of jeeps down the Orinoco and all these extraordinary things. It's great television. Yeah. Of course it is.
Yeah. It's quite difficult letting people go, though, isn't it?
Yeah, of course it is. But it's for the BBC to decide. It's not for me to decide. I mean, and I have no idea what happened in the cold, hot meal punch-up.
Hot steak versus
I
cheese
wasn't there. I can't
platter.
be a referee on it. So, but in answer to Martin, quite simply, it's for his boss to decide. Full stop.
We move on somewhere else. Craig,
Mike in Barnsley. Hello, Mike.
Hey, good morning.
Morning.
Yeah, my point's in relation to the under-occupancy charge, namely the bedroom tax.
Yeah.
Firstly, can I ask, do you think it's fair that, in particular with Barnsley Council, that when deciding if someone's struggling to pay the bedroom tax, there's a payment called a discretionary housing payment where you can apply to the council.
Yeah.
You have to give them all the outgoings, all your income, etc., etc. We don't feel it's fair that now with Barnsley Council, they take into account the disability living allowance that my brother receives, both the care and component. They count that as income, whereas any other means-tested benefit, they don't. They also inform us that this time round that the government have not put in as much money, so to speak, as last year, 2013, as well. So the government have not allowed as much DHP funding. And my third point is if, which is unlikely, but if you were to be coalition with Labour, would you agree with Labour in scrapping the bedroom tax?
Right, Mike. So lots of questions. Firstly, on the amount of DHP, when I get back to you, we've actually provided tens of millions of pounds. In fact, I personally insisted that the discretionary housing payments made available to councils should be very significantly increased a while back to make sure that tough cases were given hard cash. And how councils administer that, as you rightly said, Mike, is quite variable. In fact, quite a lot of councils simply haven't used the discretionary housing payments made available to them by central government and have actually sent the money back. But why don't I look at the details of how different councils are, what they're counting in, what they're counting out? When they make an assessment of whether DHP should be made available on the spare bedroom. So you basically have three positions now, Mike, in between the three main Westminster parties. You've got the Conservatives saying it's all fine. They just carry on with the spare bedroom subsidy change as it is. The Labour Party is saying, let's scrap it altogether, even though there's clearly an issue there because people are being given housing benefit in the social rented sector, even if they've got bedrooms which they don't need, in excess of what their neighbour might get in the private rented sector.
Not retrospectively.
Well, this is what I'm going to come to. Mike. But you're quite right. And there's the third position, which is where the Liberal Democrats are, which is say, look, of course it is fair in principle to say that people in one home receive housing benefit in the private rented sector which conforms to the number of bedrooms they need, and that their neighbours in the social rented sector are treated on the same basis.
But with the private rented, it's not retrospectively.
No, I know, Mike. Can I just finish? You're absolutely right. Where we want it to be reformed is exactly as you suggest, is if someone who's been living in the social rented sector for a long period of time, receiving housing benefit under the old rules, and then is told, no, you're now not going to receive the same amount of money because you've got more bedrooms than you need. What we're saying is, if those people are offered a place to downsize and move, so that that they can, and they refuse it, well, then they're going to have to sort of then they have to pay the extra. If, however, they volunteer to move because they want to they want to they don't want to pay the extra. And they're not offered something, I think it is unfair that they are then, if you like, penalised. And we would change it in that way. And we'd also, by the way, treat disabled adults in the same way that we would treat disabled children under the new rules. I think that makes the fairness of the system clear between people are treated in the same way in the private rented sector or the social rented sector. But you don't have, which is your point, Mike, people caught out retrospectively by rules, even when they want to make efforts to meet those new rules.
And do you think it's fair and reasonable that they take into account disability living allowance as income when any other means-tested benefit sort of discount DLA?
So what? Just to be clear, what we would do is also make the reforms clear so that that adults with disabilities would be exempt from this change, just as children are. So under the reform we would have, that would not arise.
Right, Mike.
And just quickly, in terms of the budget, are Barnsley Council then wrong in their advice that the government have now cut the budget for this year? That,
Mike, I need to get back to you on, because I just don't know the answer, Mike. These are quite big sums involved, and as I said, I know that in the past, but I just can't speak for Barnsley Council's allocation now. I do know that the amount of discretionary housing payments provided by central government to councils was actually, in many cases, far in excess of what the councils then subsequently used.
All right, Mike, hang on the line. I know that one of the Deputy Prime Minister team will follow up, because we always follow up, and they're very good. They are very solicitous, and everything does take taken care of. Your spring conference for the Lib Dems starts, I think, Deputy Prime Minister, tomorrow, and it is reported you're going to come under pressure to say that if there is an alliance with the Labour Party after the next general election, you'd scrap the bedroom tax, would you?
Well, as I said, no, our position as a party, our sort of collectively agreed position is to reform it in the way that I described it. No, it's to reform it in the way that you described.
So
but it's really important, but I'll tell you why the Labour position is a bit odd. So they're saying scrap it altogether, but then, of course, what you end up with is a system where people in the social rented sector are treated differently to the people in the private rented sector. So you're paying people housing benefit on completely different bases. And actually in the past, the Labour Party always said that they felt that should change. So it's not really clear to me why the Labour Party is now saying that people should be treated differently in that way going forward.
All right, we move on to other questions.
Helen in Newton Abbot. Hello, Helen.
Hello, good morning. My question is about the debates.
Yeah.
What is your favourite format for the debates? Would you prefer the small format with just Cameron and Miliband, or one including all the parties?
So, Helen, I mean, look, I'm up for all debates of all shapes and sizes, but I have to say to you, I think the format that seems to me to be one that's been missing entirely is with what the regulators, and the regulators, this body called Ofcom, who've issued, I think, draft guidance saying that they've provided a definition, I don't know what the technical term is, for who are the major parties in this election. And they said there are 4 major parties: Conservative, Labour, Liberal Democrat and UKIP. And I think, but again, I need to check, the BBC's own draft guidance also said, they may have used different terminology, that the kind of 4 main parties are those 4. And so let's by all means have one where everybody's there. But I do think it would be a good thing to have the 4 main parties in line, not with my kind of whimsical view of this, but with the views of the regulator who regulates these things, the BBC. I think we should have the 4-way. Done as well, and it just seems to be slightly lost in the wash in this endless and increasingly vituperative and slightly silly sort of toing and froing about the debates. I mean, I have to say to you, I sort of the arrogance of the Conservatives, that they can sort of in this sort of Lord of the Manor sort of say, oh well, we don't deign to lower ourselves to everybody else's level, and so we're going to sort of loftily declare that we're not going to turn out. I just find it astonishing.
When Ed Miliband and David Cameron are trading punches as they were yesterday...
Yes, what would you do in my position? Give me some advice, Nick Fry, in the privacy of this thing.
Presumably I'd be ruled out of court or be ordered to leave the chair. I'd just have to speak. Because can I say, you're looking... I watch you...
That's
and you're looking, indeed, you're looking increasingly frustrated, the position in which you find yourself, because you are precluded, presumably, from speaking. You can't suddenly say, hang on, David, just give me a minute.
Maybe the last Prime Minister's question, shall I just suddenly grab the mace?
But now I afford you, this is what you would say. So, Mr. Clegg,
yes,
you would say what? Nick Clegg!
Oh, I'd just say, just stop this childish kind of bickering in the House of Commons. Just get on and have a debate. I mean... It's denying the British people what clearly they want or enjoyed last time, which is be able to decide for themselves. The problem with this whole Prime Minister's Questions stuff and this kind of increasingly silly sort of way in which the debate between Miliband and Cameron's happening is it's just another example of a kind of Westminster debate which excludes normal people, and that's why, funny enough, I actually agree with Nigel Farage. I think he's taking quite a sensible approach. He said, look, come on, let's just have the debates. As I said in answer to Helen, I think a 4-way debate between what has been declared as the 4 main parties is a sensible way of trying to perhaps kind of solution. So as a compromise, because that's basically what the regulators have said, I would suggest that would be the sensible way now to move forward.
So you agree with Nigel Farage on that. Do you agree with his comments that have been seen in the front pages of some newspapers this morning, that there is a dangerous Muslim 5th column abroad in this country, and that discrimination laws in the workplace are now outdated and could be scrapped?
No, I strongly disagree. Discrimination laws are there for a reason. They are there to stop people discriminating against people based on their race. And
well, we've spoken at length. Let's just listen to a little of what Nigel Farage told me earlier in the show.
The first thing I said was that we've never before had a migrant group come to Britain who've tried to change our culture, and unfortunately there are a small number in the Muslim community who genuinely want to introduce Sharia law to Britain, etc. So I think that's a wholly uncontroversial comment. The second thing I was saying was this: that small businesses, there are nearly 5 million of them, and they are a massively important part of our economy. They feel very, very pressured by continued legislation, and in many cases actually fearful of taking on staff. And what I said is this: I think that if a British employer a small business wants to employ a British person over somebody from Poland, they should be able to do that without fear that they've contravened discrimination laws. That's all I've said.
Mr. Clegg.
So I think he's mixing Sharia law, violent extremism, red tape, how small businesses run their business into one sort of great. He's skilled at this, and he sort of creates this great sort of
melange.
Mix. Yeah. Fracas, mélange. This is turning into it's increasingly continental. We should beam this show into France, perhaps.
There is a small. Might have to. There is a small number of Muslims in this country.
No. So can I just tell you?
There isn't.
No, hang on. Of course, it is just a fact to say that there is a very, very worrying phenomenon of extremism and in some cases violent extremism within parts of our Muslim communities.
That's what he's saying, Mr. Clegg.
Yes, no, I know, but that is what I'm saying. That's quite different to saying that you scrap all laws.
Right.
Which no, but it's very. That's
so
what
those are two separate conversations. So you would do agree there is a small number of Muslims who want to bring in
we
Sharia
just talked
law.
earlier about talked about earlier some girls who've left Syria.
Sure,
so it's a statement of fact, isn't it?
So now I'm running a baker's in Orpington, and I want to employ a British baker over a Polish baker. I'm not allowed to.
Yeah, no, but sorry, can I just, before we get onto that one...
Go on.
It is very, very, I think, unhelpful to conflate the decision that a baker in Orpington can make about a Polish and a British worker with violent extremism that you see, in Iraq and Syria. And that is what is so irresponsible of the way in which Nigel Farage handles these issues. He instills fear by confusing a lot of these things. Now, on the former, we talked about this earlier, actually, in this programme. Do we need to be vigilant? Do we need to strengthen our armoury against all forms of violent extremism, but including those violent extremists who invoke Islam, by the way, perverting Islam, actually, from its true origins for their own violent ends? Yes, of course we do. Of course we do. But no one's going to disagree with that. Do I think you should scrap, in the same sentence, all discrimination laws that stop people from discriminating how they employ people on the basis of race?
Yeah. What about nationality?
I think it's wrong. Well, and by the way,
I can't employ a British baker. I have to employ a Polish baker.
You employ the person you think who does the job best. But
if I want to employ British bakers, I can't necessarily.
Well, of course you can. If you choose that person you think they do the job best. What you can't do is say to someone.
But what Mr. Farage is saying, that we should be looking after our own British unemployed, not least in the light of the increase.
And by the way, we have done with great success, because the huge expansion in employment over the recent years, the vast bulk of those new jobs have gone to British workers.
Why can't a British company say we employ British people?
Well, but they do. Of course they do.
No, but they can't say that, can they? We only want to employ British people.
This is
why can't it do that?
What you can't do under law is say you're only going to employ people based on their race. I mean, those laws have been in place for a very long period of time. You can choose the person.
Tackling the British unemployed, indigenous British unemployed, 49% increase in young black males, 49% increase in young black males facing unemployment. A company saying we just want to employ young black males.
Wait, hang on a minute. Actually, employment in black minority ethnic communities in this country is now at the highest level it's ever been.
I'm sorry, it's up 49%. You must have seen those figures.
These are Labour figures put out about young people in certain communities. Actually, overall employment in black minority ethnic backgrounds in communities in this country is now at the highest level it's ever been.
Well, so the Labour figures are wrong.
Well, as I say, overall employment in black minority ethnic background communities is higher now than it's ever been. In the same way that there are now more women in employment than ever before. Youth unemployment is lower than when we came into office. And all I'm saying is, yes, let's have a debate about violent extremism. Yes, let's have a debate about making sure that young British people have got the right skills. I was yesterday celebrating the massive expansion, because of Liberal Democrats in government, of apprenticeships. More than 2 million apprenticeships started in this Parliament because of what we've done to get young British youngsters with the skills they need to find jobs. But do I think that you make our society sort of fairer or our economy stronger by scrapping laws which are there to stop people discriminating against folk because of their race? I don't think that's the way forward.
I must let more calls after. I'm glad you want healthy debate, because there's something we must debate, which is the Lib Dems' position as regards donations.
Yep.
It is reported that your party has been in receipt of an illicit donation, that one of your fundraisers, who I think subsequently left the party, went to all sorts of ways to find his way through the system to ensure that much money could be given. And this is how Danny Alexander responded.
I mean, I just want you to know that I personally am very, very grateful for what you're doing and what you're offering to do. And to reassure you, it genuinely will make a difference to the result of the election. No, in the context of what we've been talking about tonight, I mean, really, it will make a difference. So I don't want to intrude on the details, but genuinely, it would make a difference.
I won't intrude on the details. Surely that's what the Chief Secretary of the Treasury should do.
Oh, for heaven's sake. Look, let's first be clear about this. I mean, just on Danny, all you've played as a clip is Danny being a polite guy, just saying thank you to someone who he's been told is supporting the party. I mean, it's just... The idea that Danny's done anything, or any parliamentarian's done anything wrong, is categorically untrue. But having said that, on the issue of Ibrahim Taguri... Firstly, no check has been...
former Lib Dem fundraiser, just to tell my listeners.
No check has been received by the Liberal Democrats. No check has been cashed. If we'd received this cheque in question, of course it would have been scrutinised and checked. By the way, we asked, no other political party has done this in British politics. We asked last summer the Electoral Commission to come into the Liberal Democrat headquarters to vet and audit the way in which we check these payments, and they said that the way we do so is sound and satisfactory. Hang on, can I just... Secondly, he has stood down. We have referred everything to the Electoral Commission. It is for them to now look at all the twists and turns of this. But I just say on the point that you raised, to suggest that Danny Alexander, because he's recorded for being polite to someone who he has been told is supporting the party...
So cash gets you to the top of the Lib Dems,
No, of course it doesn't.
How did he get to Danny Alexander then?
Well, he was invited to a dinner.
Because he made a cheque, because he paid
because he said he was supporting the party. Danny had no idea.
Through money?
Well, because he's supporting the party. I mean,
through money, yes. So cash gets me possibly to you.
Well, you sit with me for half an hour every week. I mean, to my knowledge, I haven't given him brown envelopes to do it so far.
I give you nothing at all. But that's how you get to senior members of the Lib Dems.
Of course you don't. But
so £7,650 gets you din-dins with Danny Alexander. How much to get you and Vince Cable?
That's ridiculous. It's not. It doesn't work like that at all. All I'm saying is that
how did this undercover reporter posing as a businessman? How did he get there? Then?
Because he said that he was supporting the Liberal Democrats.
I'm supporting the Lib Dems, and where's my chequebook? And I've got £7,000.
This is absurd. Are you seriously saying that politicians, MPs like Danny Alexander, are now forbidden from thanking and being polite to people who they are told...
Your fundraiser was working also to get your cousins to give them money.
That's a different matter. What I'm reacting to very strongly is this idea that Danny Alexander's done anything wrong, which is what the Daily Telegraph is somehow seeking to imply. And it is completely...
Your fundraiser was operating as a lone wolf.
The fundraiser is now stood down, is now not a Liberal Democrat candidate. No cheque was received by the Liberal Democrats. Mm-hmm. If it were ever to be received, this cheque, it would be scrutinised by, as I say, the processes we've got in place, which only us, no one other political parties done this, has been audited by the Electoral Commission and found to be satisfactory and sound. The Electoral Commission is the party, the third party, the dispassionate, objective organisation which should look at this kind of stuff.
Where is this cheque then? Because it was reported it was received by Mr. Taguri.
My understanding this morning is that this cheque is somewhere in Brent, but it's not been received by the Liberal Democrats. It's not been received by us. And if it had been, of course we would have looked at it very closely, as we do all donations received.
Doesn't all this need to be tidied up in the next Parliament, Mr. Clegg?
Yes, but look, I mean,
it's rather tawdry.
Yes, in terms of overall clearing up party funding rules generally, remember, I thought 5 years ago, great, we're finally going to be able to crack on with clearing up party funding rules, because look, let's be open about this. You can't have politics without money, because you have to pay for leaflets and all sorts of things. It's not a sort of for free activity. How parties raise money is always landed all parties into controversy. I then got Ed Miliband, Ed Miliband and David Cameron to put forward representatives so that we could have a cross-party discussion to reach agreement on this on a cross-party basis, because those two parties, Labour and the Conservatives, had said they wanted party funding reform, and they skewered it. And I just think, it'd be a good thing if in the next Parliament we could all get together within 6 months of the next election and put in place new rules. But as for this particular instance, Danny Alexander's done absolutely nothing wrong. As for Ibrahim Taguri, he's no longer a Liberal Democrat candidate. No cheque was received, and the Electoral Commission's looking into it.
Should we move to another question? We've got another couple of minutes.
But I don't have a name.
Yes, I think if we go...
Eric in Liverpool, I do. Sorry, Eric.
Hello, thank you. Hi, Nick.
Hiya.
Hello, sir.
Hi. Right,
you sound breathless, Eric.
A couple of questions, really.
Might have time for one. Go ahead.
Right, first question. I know Ed Miliband's got a lot of flack, for using his family as a kind of sort of propaganda tool, in the media. Using his family to actually sort of bolster up his image. But can Nick Clegg promise everyone now on air that he won't do the same, because it is very tempting, isn't it?
This is the appearance by Ed Miliband walking in the park with his wife Justine and the two sons, which actually were full on camera, and then we went into the kitchen, and I think we went to a cafe with Mr. and Mrs. Miliband. I have to say, David Cameron, we've also been in his kitchen, we've seen his wife, and we've seen his children. Nick Clegg, we see a lot of your lovely wife. I don't think you've ever put your children up for public examination. Where do you stand on this?
So, Eric, I think you might catch glimpses of my kitchen. You certainly, I hope, will catch sight of Miriam.
Yeah, I
you will
don't
never.
blame you.
You will never catch sight of my children. I mean, and look. By the way, I'm not criticising. I'm not making a bleak criticism of David Cameron, Ed Miliband, or their.
But why do you feel the way you do?
Well, I've always felt very, very strongly that my children are entitled to an innocent childhood just as much as any other kids. We still live in the home that we did before I became Deputy Prime Minister. We didn't take up the invitation or the suggestion to move into a great sort of fancy flat behind the battlements of Downing Street or Whitehall. And the reason we've done that is because, I mean, much though I'll talk all day long, if you want, Eric, with pride about my 3 little lovely boys, I'm completely besotted by them. I don't want them, when they go to school, to suddenly have someone sitting next to them say, "Oh, I saw you on telly." It makes them feel different. Now, look, I cannot stress enough, if other politicians want to do things as parents, it's entirely free for any parent to do whatever they want. But Miriam and I have always been very, very adamant that, we are mums and dads first. We want to protect the innocence of our children, and one of the ways we're trying to do that and make them feel as absolutely normal as anybody else is to keep their life the same, so we're still living in the same home, as I said, and also that we keep them out of the public eye.
But why do you think I want to see inside your kitchen?
Well, you haven't seen my kitchen. If you saw it, you might change your mind.
Ed Miliband thinks I want to see his kitchen. David Cameron thinks I want to see his kitchen. I admire Nigel Farage. I don't think he even let me through the front gate. Why do you think potential voters want to see your kitchen?
I've no idea whether people do or don't.
Why do it then?
Oh, because you're constantly asked to. You're constantly asked.
Well, you might be asked to do lots of things.
No, and I am, by the way, constantly asked, though people have thankfully stopped doing it now, but I am constantly asked, wouldn't it be nice to do something with your child? Show yourself as a family, man, as indeed I am. You're so nice with your children. It'd be so nice for people to see it. And Miriam and I have always, very much drawn the line there and said, absolutely not. Look, I don't really care whether people see a kettle in my kitchen. It doesn't make much difference. I personally don't think it really makes much difference how people vote, but if people want to speak to me in the kitchen as well as out on the street, then I'm very happy to oblige.
One last one. Where we go?
Chris in Golders Green.
Oh, good morning, Mr. Clegg.
Hello.
Hello. I just want to ask you, in your debate last year with Nigel Farage...
Yes.
You stated that Mr. Farage's suggestion that the EU are planning to create their own army was, to quote you, simply not true, and that it was a dangerous fantasy.
Yes.
This week, the EU Commission Chief Jean-Claude Juncker has now called for the creation of an EU army. Yeah. Were you simply trying to mislead, or will you now admit that you were wrong and that the dangerous fantasy you spoke of may in fact become an even more dangerous reality?
No, I actually happen to think that Jean-Claude Juncker and Nigel Farage are both dangerous fantasists when it comes to this issue. It's not going to happen. It doesn't matter whether Nigel Farage says it might happen or Jean-Claude Juncker.
Well, he's in a position of considerable influence.
No, he's not. He can't create a European army. It's just.
But the man at the top wants it, and you said it was a dangerous fantasy. So it's still a dangerous fantasy.
Yes, because it's not going to happen.
No, okay.
It's not going to happen. He can't determine a European. Look, the only two powers, Chris, on this point, just to be serious for a minute, the only two powers in Europe who've got any military clout to throw around are France and Britain. And if you really want Europe to punch above its weight militarily, the way to do it is not to create these fantasies of European armies, but whether Nigel Farage or Jean-Claude Juncker think it should or shouldn't happen. You've got to get the French and the British sort of defence arrangements and establishments working more effectively together. And I personally think we could do a lot more of that. My coalition partners are somewhat reluctant to go the whole hog on that, and I think we could work much more closely with the French and get more bangs for our bucks.
Just lastly, so that's not going ahead, and I have to tell you, nor I was going to have some water sports deals with Boris Johnson, we were going to be sprayed by a water cannon, which is now not going to be licensed by Theresa May before this general election. This was to show the safety of £200,000 worth of water cannons that the Mayor had bought for the streets of London.
You're sounding a bit like David Cameron coming up with endless alibis why he won't do the debate. You're not coming up with an alibi. You're not using Theresa May as an alibi to not be fired.
Now, I know down the years you and Theresa have had moments of discord. Is there any way you could lean on her just to allow this to give one good spray for me and Boris?
I now undertake solemnly to intervene on your behalf and Boris Johnson's behalf to exempt you and said water cannon from her
and the Mayor, of course.
Well, and the Mayor's what I said, yeah. So that both of you can and I'm very happy to be there at hand to help provide you with towels, pick you up, whatever you need.
Do you want to hold the hose?
To hold the hose, to press the button, whatever so that the nation can see you and Boris Johnson being subject to a water cannon test. I think public policy demands it, and I will speak to Theresa May as soon as I can.
On that pledge, I feel reinvigorated. Speaking here, Deputy Prime Minister Nick Clegg, on Call Clegg, on LBC when news is next.
The Deputy Prime Minister has told LBC any suggestion the Chief Secretary to the Treasury has done anything wrong after meeting a fake party donor is categorically untrue. The party's former chief fundraiser, Ibrahim Taguri, has quit following claims he told an undercover